It may not have been cuffing season, but there was this young, good-looking frat boy who decided that it was time to leave his partying days to the past and that he was going to now move forward and settle down and find the perfect wife so that he could have the perfect life, and they now have the perfect children and enjoy everything that was set before them in the future. So he decided he was going to venture out and find this woman. He came upon this farmer who happened to live on the perfect little farm, and he just happened to have 3 daughters. So he met up with the farmer in the grocery store, and the farmer said, "Listen, you're looking to settle down. You should meet my daughters. I have 3 of them." So he decided to now get to know them. So he went on a date with the first daughter that his father put forward, and he hung out with her, got to know her a little bit. The father said, "Now come over my house tomorrow and let me know what you thought." So he went over to the father's house after 1 or 2 dates, and he told the father, he said, "Listen, she's a beautiful girl. She looks amazing. She has a wonderful personality, but you may not be able to tell, but she's just a wee bit pigeon-toed." So he said, "I don't think it's going to work out." So the father said, "Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but I do have 2 more daughters." He said, "Why don't you take my second daughter on a date? I think that she's going to be that perfect wife for you." So the young frat boy went and he said, "All right, let me get to know her." They went out on a date or 2, came back to the father and said, "Listen, she is incredible. She's probably what I thought I would always need. She looks the part and everything." He said, "But you probably couldn't tell, but she's just a wee bit cross-eyed." He said, "So I don't think it's going to work out." Well, the farmer was a little disappointed, but yet there was still a glimmer of hope. He said, "Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, but I still have another daughter." So the young, good-looking fella, he said, "All right, let me go out with this one. Hopefully she'll be the one." And that's what happened. They went out on a few dates, and a few dates turned into now more dates. Guess what? They fell in love, they got married, and they had a child. So now he's a good-looking guy. She's a beautiful young woman who he said she is the perfect one. And guess what? They got pregnant. Here it came to the time where 9 months later, man, that the baby came forth. The baby was born, and the fellow was at the hospital. He went over to the nursery to see his baby, and he could not believe what he saw. I mean, it just ruined his whole mood. It ruined his whole day. He went back to the farmer, now his father-in-law, and said, "Hey, I don't get this. I'm a good-looking guy, perfect height, perfect weight, and all the dimensions are just perfect. There's this beautiful woman, your daughter, that I married. She's just perfect. We've had this perfect union together." He said, "But I went to see the baby, and it is the ugliest looking baby I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's atrocious." He said, "I don't understand how this could have happened." And the father said to him, he said, "Well, you probably couldn't tell, but when you met her, she was just a wee bit pregnant." My gosh, here's the thing. There are no perfect people. There are no perfect people. There are no perfect situations. There are no perfect journeys. It's kind of like how they say, you over here trying to be the cat's meow. Well, here's the thing about the cat's meow. When a cat meows, it is intentional. There is a purpose. And people who own cats understand that when the cat meows, it's always directed towards them. And if you understand it and get that clarity as far as learning the cat and learning the cat's meow, you can understand exactly or perfectly what the cat is trying to say. If the cat is in pain, you get its meow. If the cat is hungry, you get its meow. When it hisses or when it makes certain noises, you perfectly have the ability to understand what it's trying to communicate. So I want to ask you this question. Are you trying to live your life, be and experience the cat's meow? There is so much more that you can encounter in life if you cut that out, stop trying to live and be and experience and have people respond to you as the cat's meow. But when you get to that point where you're not trying to be perfect. That in the sight of others, in the sight of God, and even in your own sight, when you get to that place where you say, listen, nothing is perfect, I am not perfect, only God and His will is perfect, there's so much freedom that will come from that. So here it is. I want to share with you 3 things that happen when you try to be the cat's meow. 3 things that will take place in your life when you are trying to seek perfection instead of just being. Understand that the world is not seeking or wanting you to be perfect. The world just wants you to be present. And that is what seeking perfection will take away. It'll take away your ability to just be in the present, pick up lessons, pick up treasures, and move forward in joy, with great relationships, and with awesome continuity, continuing the work that God has already set before you. Let's take a look at these 3 things. The first thing that I want to share with you as far as what seeking perfection or trying to be the cat's meow does in your life is that it stalls your increase. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Here it is where we're experiencing and we're reading about how Solomon was encouraging and pressing upon the hearts and the minds of rich people like you and I, of rich people that they need to invest their riches, that they need to do something with their riches and with their wealth. Specifically, they need to help those that are in need. They need to help the poor. When they do that, that it's going to give a great return as far as their harvest is concerned, that it's going to benefit them in the end. And then in verse 4 of Ecclesiastes chapter 11, it says, if you wait for perfect conditions, you will not get anything done. And sometimes when we are seeking to do things, sometimes when we are trying to move forward, when we have a vision, when we have a dream, we have something that we know that we need to get done. When we're waiting for the right time for things to be perfect, all it's doing is stalling our increase. That is what the scripture is saying. Like, listen, take advantage of the time. Even in my own life, there were some things this year that one specific thing as the year went on, as the year progressed, that I needed to get done. And every day, man, I dreaded even sitting down to begin this process. Why? Because I wanted to make sure, man, I'm thinking so much about it being perfect. I'm thinking so much about it being right, and perhaps what others are going to think, how they're going to perceive what I'm doing, how it is going to be received, what it's going to look like, because I need everything to be perfect. Well, if you wait for perfect conditions to do anything, you're not going to get anything done. So that waiting or trying to be perfect and waiting for the perfect circumstances, the perfect people to come about, the perfect resources, the perfect amount of provisions to come forth, it stalls your increase. What it does, it now leads to procrastination. Perfection leads to procrastination. Procrastination leads to paralysis. Perfection is being as free as possible from any flaws or defects. That leads to procrastination. Procrastination is delaying or postponing something. Perhaps it's what you need to do or what you feel like God is telling you to move forward in. And that leads to paralysis. Paralysis is the inability to move forward and sometimes the inability to feel absolutely anything. So that when we understand that when I talk about perfection or the need to be perfect, when it has the ability to stall your influence or to stall your increase or to stall your ability to experience the harvest that is set for your life, it starts with that desire to be perfect. It leads to procrastination, and now it leads to paralysis. So when you want to be perfect, man, it stops you from moving forward because you are so focused on everything else. Focus on the context and what something looks like, perhaps on the outside, how it's received, and what the idea in your head of what you think it should be. But God has not called it or you to be perfect. God has called you to move forward. God has called you to now receive what He has for you and not find yourself in that point where you just don't bust a move. Remember that God's objective for you and everything that He gives to you is that you not just occupy, but occupy for the sake of advancement. So now when you're seeking to be the cat's meow, and you want everything to be the cat's meow, to be perceived as the cat's meow, that perfectly understood, perfectly received, perfectly interpreted, it's going to stop you from being able to move forward. It's going to put you in that place of procrastination. And that procrastination, if you don't deal with it, is going to lead to paralysis, your inability to move forward and do anything, you're going to find yourself at the end of the year, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, saying, what really did I accomplish? So that's the first thing. The first thing that perfection or seeking to be the cat's meow does, it stalls your increase. So the second thing that seeking perfection and trying to be perfect, seeking and wanting to experience at all times the cat's meow does, on top of it stalling your increase, is that it will sabotage your connections, that it will ruin your relationships, it will damage your associations. Proverbs chapter 17 puts it this way, verse 9, it says that love forgets mistakes. But when you focus on and drill into, I'm paraphrasing, an offense, man, it'll separate even the best of friends. From the Message Bible, it puts it this way, I gotta read it to you. It says, overlook an offense in bond of friendship. Fasten on to a slight and goodbye friend. That when you focus on perfection and the need even for others to be perfect around you, man, it will kill what you are having with them. It'll kill and ruin the relationship that you're experiencing with them. It's kind of like a nitpicker. That's someone who is always nitpicking at things that don't really matter. This is one of my favorite subjects to talk about when I have spoken on the fact that love covers. The subject of nitpicking. I was a nitpicker at one time. Every now and then I gotta check myself. And I gotta say, you know what? You're nitpicking. What does it mean to nitpick? Let me tell you the definition of nitpicking. Nitpicking means to be excessively concerned with or critical of inconsequential details, things that don't really matter. A nitpicker is bothered by minor problems, come on, seemingly looking for something to criticize. And when we do that and we're looking for other people to be perfect, trying to find perfect people, and even ourselves, sometimes it's not just the fact that you're nitpicking at others, but you're nitpicking at yourself. You look in the mirror, even physically, and you're nitpicking at every little part of your body. And now it's clear and it's important to understand that typically when people are nitpicking at you, and when they are being critical of you, when people are nagging at you, it's really from the point of an insecurity issue that they have with themselves. So it stalls your increase, it will ruin and sabotage your relationships, causes friendships to end, and people to just nitpick and pull at minor things that don't really matter. I heard a story of someone who was conducting a workshop, and he stood in front of the crowd and he asked the people, he said, have any of you ever met a perfect person? Have any of you ever met a perfect man or woman? He said, if you've met a perfect woman, go ahead and stand up. Well, no one stood up. He said, if you ever met a perfect man, go ahead and stand up. Well, there was an older gentleman in the back of the room. He stood up. The crowd was so surprised, as was the person conducting the workshop. And he said, excuse me, you're telling me that you have met a perfect man? The older gentleman replied, and he said, well, I didn't know him personally, but I heard quite a bit about him. He said, he was my wife's first husband. Here's the reality. There are no perfect people. If you have decided that you are going to have friends, that you've decided that you're going to have family members, you've got to understand no one is going to be perfect. So with that understanding, stop nitpicking. Stop focusing on things that don't really matter. Stop majoring on the minor, but choose to understand that love covers a multitude of faults, that love forgets mistakes, love forgets flaws, it just loves. It doesn't mean that the faults are going to cease. It just loves. It covers. But when you begin to nitpick and nag, it ends the best of friendships. It will now sever the greatest ties and relationships. So it stalls your increase, perfection, seeking to be the cat's meow and experience the cat's meow. It stalls your increase and it sabotages your connection. So this is what we understand now. That seeking perfection and wanting to be perfect, wanting everyone around you in circumstances and conditions to be perfect, wanting to experience the cat's meow, that it stalls your increase, that it sabotages your connections. But here's the thing, that it becomes very personal concerning you versus you, that it steals your joy. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 16 says, don't be too virtuous or too wise. It says, why make yourself miserable? The Message Bible says, why die needlessly. It's not talking about virtue and righteousness or wisdom, but it's talking about perfectionism. Why put yourself in that place where you're beating up on yourself so much that nothing is good enough, that things are bad, but they're not bad enough, that you're putting so much pressure on yourself? But it's saying, listen, and it's pointing out to us, listen, just be, man, live life, seek wisdom, seek understanding from God, and understand that trying to be perfect, it's going to sabotage your connections, it's going to stall your increase, and it's going to steal your joy. You are going to drive yourself crazy. Here's the thing, we're all on a journey. We all want to be better. We all understand that we have things that we're facing and that we're trying to go over hurdles that we're trying to leap over. But you've got to do this. Take one step at a time. It comes down to this, and this is practical application based upon my personal experience, what I've gone through, what I'm going through. We understand that perfectionism and seeking to be perfect, waiting for the perfect conditions, it stalls your increase. It sabotages your connections. It steals your joy. What I understand is that I've had to ask God, what do you want me to focus on today? Give us our daily bread. Daddy, Heavenly Father, what do you have for me today? Where should my focus be? Start there. When the Bible talks about leaving the elementary teachings of the gospel and moving into perfection, it's not talking about being perfect. It's talking about maturing. That's why it's so important to practice the pause. When I join you here on YouTube and these videos, I'm just trying to explain to you and hopefully convey to you the importance of practicing the pause and asking God this question: what should I focus on? Give me my daily bread. God, give me the dose and the measure of what you have for me today. Abba, what do you have for me today? Where should my focus be? When it's saying leaving the elementary teachings of the gospel, moving to perfection, the scripture is not talking about being perfect. It's talking about maturing. So practicing the pause will give you the ability to pick up the treasures. Once again, the treasures are the lessons. So I pray and I hope, and as we move forward into the rest of this year and into a new year, my hope for you is that you will get the game plan down. That you will write the vision and you will make that thing plain, as Habakkuk said. And that you will ask God, what should I focus on? God, give me the ability to shake myself loose. Give me the ability to rise out and rise up from the ashes that perhaps my insecurities and my past have put me in and have made of my life. No, that is not my story. But I've got to say, listen, I've got to move forward. That I'm not going to be in that place and try to put my mind in that place of wanting perfection that will lead to procrastination, that will lead to paralysis. That's not going to be my story. I understand that I've got the faith of God. The faith of God is not a monument, but it's a movement. I've got to move forward. I'll be able to say things like, as Jesus is, so am I in this world. I'll be able to say things like, I've got the mind of Christ. And the mind of Christ says to me, there has to be continuity as far as the work that Jesus Christ started. And I understand that he said, even greater works shall you do. So that is my prayer for you. That is what I hope for you. That is my declaration for you, that you are not going to try to wait for all the conditions and the circumstances to be right around you, but you're going to bust a move. God blesses those that bust a move. So shake yourself, man. Shake yourself and rise. That's what Dr. Maya Angelou said. I still rise. Still I rise. No matter what has been placed around you, no matter what demands people have placed on you and your education and your experience and your ministry and your family. No. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all earth be silent before him. Silence the noise. Silence the opinions of others. Silence what others have said about you. God, what do you have for me today? What should I be focusing on? What should I be doing? I want to mature and not be perfect. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4 from the Message Bible. Again, it says, don't focus on the clouds. Live your life. Get on with your life. That's what I hope for you. So have a wonderful rest of this day. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful rest of the year. And have a phenomenal 2019. I love you. And I'll see you real soon. Peace.